pretty much from that moment on, I understood that, well, I don't have a lot of money to invest. I don't have a lot of money to apply it all in one single go. The whole belief of this comes from the idea that I don't no longer believe in the fiat currency. So that was the only real time I kind of panicked, because it was something I don't think anybody could have saw coming.
Hello and welcome to the Ultimate Bull Run, where we bring 100 bulls, 100 stories in this one legendary run. Our mission is to celebrate the journey and the process of trading and investing, rather than just focusing on the numbers, because we believe wins and losses are just the tip of the iceberg. And today, I'm thrilled to announce our guest. He has been quietly building a legacy for nearly 80 years with one of the most powerful yet underrated strategies: daily dollar cost averaging. $30 a day, every single day, no matter the headlines, no matter the market conditions. It is the journey of conviction, discipline, and a vision for something bigger. What is coming is more than just a story about Bitcoin. It is about, the sacrifices, the lessons, the transformations of a retail investor like you and me, who proved that small and consistent action can rewrite your financial future. So if you ever doubted the process or wondered if it is worth it, this is the conversation you don't want to miss out. Without further ado, let me introduce to you Rego, the trader. Welcome to the show, Rego. Welcome to the Ultimate.
Very glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, it is an honor. Yeah. How are you feeling?
Pretty good. Good. Can't complain. Business as usual. You know how it goes.
The bull run has started. Yeah, definitely. So Rego, I want people to understand whoever they are, wherever they are in their life, all they have to do is just start. Very often the victory is glorified and the beginning, where it started, is kind of ignored. And many retail investors or traders, they struggle with where to begin, right? So would you take us back to 2016 and talk about what was your life like before you started investing? Was it, the professional 9-to-5 job? Like, what was the sources of income?
Absolutely. So if we go back all the way to 2016, it's not where I'd first heard about Bitcoin. Prior to this, Bitcoin was kind of seen as like a foreign thing to me, but I had heard about it, just didn't have the interest or I want to say the fascination with it. I mostly referred to it as, what you would see in the media headlines at the time. It was seen as, some sort of drug-related money, et cetera, et cetera. But it took a financial buddy of mine to first introduce it to me. He had just gotten involved with banking itself. And at the time, I was just coming out of, I want to say, a part-time job, because it was not really full-time. There were a lot of odd jobs, from irrigation systems in the summer to static painting, right? So finance really wasn't my forte or my interest at the time. But I had heard about Bitcoin originally from my friend that was into this, and at the time he was starting to make a financial impact on his life, and we were younger at the time, right? We were maybe 21, 22 years old. So naturally, I was fascinated by this. He had a fancier car. He seemed to understand his stock market, and it was something that always intrigued me. But I always felt that there was a nice barrier between how to get involved or how to start or apply it. And he had told me about Bitcoin. I want to say it was about, in terms of US dollars, maybe $700, $800 at the time. And my knowledge to Bitcoin at this time was, this is very confusing. It reminds me a lot of how the internet was in the 80s, maybe even the 90s. It was very, very hard to get into. At least this is what I understood. And my friend pulled me aside and he said, look, this is criminally undervalued at the current time. And he showed me it's not so difficult. It's actually quite easy. All you need to do is download this wallet and, hop on this exchange, complete a little bit of a KYC at the time. And that's it. You're done. Look, I'll send you some right now. And I remember this like it was yesterday, because it's what started the journey. Because my original thought was Bitcoin cryptocurrency is like this very, very, I associated the term cryptography with it, which requires an extensive understanding of math, and you need to be quite tech savvy. And again, finance was in my interest. So on my steps at my old home, he managed to make me download this app on my phone, put his phone over mine, sent a QR code to another QR code. And just like that, I was an owner of Bitcoin. And that's really what started the journey, my fascination with it. I began to read from a number of influencers at the time, right off the top of my head, guys like Alistair Milne, Francis Pouliot, Adam Back, and maybe a couple of others that I can't really reference right now. And the more I got into it, the more I understood, the more I realized, this solves everything. And it's this introduction into Bitcoin is what made me understand pretty much what money is and how it operates and why people are so, I want to say bullish, but why they saw it as a glimmer of hope, really. And like many others, I fell down this same rabbit hole. I started to learn more and more and more about it. And pretty much from that moment on, I understood that, well, I don't have a lot of money to invest. I don't have a lot of money to apply it all in one single go. And from my understanding at the time was that it's an extremely volatile asset. And it was highly, highly speculative at the time. But the more I learned about it, the more I realized is there's no real perfect timing to gain exposure. And instead, what you should do is just apply whatever you can um, into the asset itself. And that's where I decided to make a very, very, I want to say, radical decision to how do you say it, apply this strategy every day. I realize $30 a day or $15 every 12 hours is, quite expensive, right? At the time, just for some context, I lived at home. I didn't have really any bills to pay aside from my phone. And for the most part, coming from a European background, staying with your family was a pretty well-known thing. So instead of buying a car, instead of going out with my friends, instead of doing all the things you would assume a 20-year-old does during that part of his life, I scraped every dollar I could, pretty much. To me, that was my retirement plan, and it was a big risk. At the time, it was a big risk. The time, what you see today and how certain it appears to the public audience today was not the same as 2016. It was still considered a laughing stock. It was still considered a loony conspiracy theory, anything that you would consider that goes against the public narrative. But for some reason, it clicked with me, and it originally started my understanding of money and pretty much how supply works. And with the help of my friend, which I don't know if he's comfortable with me naming him, but with the help of him, he got me started. And that's really what started the journey for me. From that moment on, $15 every 12 hours, $30 a day, regardless of the price, really. But that's how it started.
That is real interesting. It is very true that I think there is a saying, if you show me your friend, I'll show you your future. And
Absolutely.
your surrounding really shape you, the future that you're heading towards. And not only that, it's like you taking time to kind of read through what it is really important as well. A lot of people kind of listen to their friends, they invest, they lose. If they make money, that's good, right? If they lose money, it's like, I lost the money and I'm out, right? But you spend your own time understanding what the Bitcoin was for, the supply and demand, the problem with current financial system, and you saw that as not only as an investment, I hope, probably as a store of value, like as a faith on what the, like, you did mention about the cryptography, right? It is a math. There is a cryptography behind how the blockchain, and then the how data is stored and everything, right? And going back and understanding the fundamental of what it really is and why we need it is really important. That is really true. Yeah. Talking about this $30 a day, which is $15 every 12 hours, right? How did you, would you mind elaborating on how did you kind of come up with that decision? What made you kind of feel that number, which is $30, feel like realistic and achievable for you at that time, right? The reason I'm asking that is, let's take any worker who's working part-time, or working at McDonald's. They might be making $12 to $15 an hour. If they work 8 hours, right, and they just spend 2 hours of their working hour in Bitcoin, that is around $30 a day, they will be in the same position that you are 10 years from now. But again, different people have different financial status for themselves, the current financial status. What made you that number feel realistic?
Well, I saw it mostly as, again, a lot of my friends at this point in their life were making lease payments or car purchases that came out roughly with the insurance and everything, somewhere towards $600, $800 a month. And I thought that was quite expensive. Again, there are, there is a bit of context to add to this, because I understand most people probably live on their own, have a family, kids to take care of, and $30 is expensive when you start to add all this. I'm an older person now, so I do understand that responsibility gets in the way, and that can dramatically affect what you can allocate into something so speculative, right? The truth is, I was in many ways blessed and fortunate to have parents that really did provide a lot of this for me. And it's not really the most flattering thing to be in your mid-20s and still live at home, right? So again, I do pay a lot of homage to that, especially to my parents for allowing me this sort of, how do you say, opportunity to allocate so much. And again, $30 a day does add up. For a lot of people, it's not so easy, it's not so simple. But the way I saw people or friends around me, surrounding mutuals, the way they would effortlessly lease a phone or pay a phone, monthly payments, especially with a car, going on vacation 2-3 times a year, some of them even being cigarette smokers, myself at the time as well, spending $20 to $30 on cigarettes a day. A lot of the times there are a lot of expenses that could be simply avoided, and that's what I saw it right away. There were a lot of things that I did not need to be spending on. Some context, I would spend a lot of my money on FIFA Ultimate Team, for example. I would spend so much money on that, and I just realized, well, this could be avoided, this could be cut. There was nothing that was essential that I needed in my life that didn't require, there was nothing in my life that absolutely needed this $30. It would just otherwise be sitting on my bank account. And if I understood anything about Bitcoin at the time, was that every dollar you have available is just an accelerant down the line, right? To not only multiply, but quintuple, at the time. That situation, it's a bit exclusive. Again, I don't expect everybody to have their expenses paid for like I did with my parents. And make no mistake, my parents come from a family of debt. They were never good with money. They were never knowledgeable on the subject. And I guess that prompted me to understand more about it. But at the same time, although they were never really able to provide me, all the things that my friends were getting, coming from more spoiled parents, they still provided me a home. They provided me a roof over my heads and a meal at the end of the day, right? Having my own job eventually led to this, right? So again, $30 a day in comparison to other people might be considered a lot, but it's not what is necessary. Pretty much anything that could be allocated to that would otherwise be sitting in your bank, I think, is a good way to start. But that's my story.
That is true. And like you mentioned, we don't even realize where we are spending those $10, $20, and $30 to. The cigarettes, and then the games, FIFA, and then, like every weekend there's a beer party. Is when you count that thing again over, that's why this strategy works most of the time. Probably 99% of the time, but it requires consistent discipline, and it is like most underrated strategy out of all. And Rego, so like many investors, you did mention about the market volatility.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting interesting because you started in 2016. Since then, you might have experienced a lot of volatility, right? I can relate, right? How did you emotionally or mentally handle watching the Bitcoin price fluctuate so dramatically over the years, especially during the market crashes like COVID and then FTX, and even the regulation wasn't clear back then, where you could have sold at any point, you could have given up. And let me make that word clear: you could have given up anytime you wanted because of the market situation.
Absolutely.
Bitcoin went from, like you said, you bought it $800, $900, right? Bitcoin went from $3,000 to $20,000, back to $3,000, and from there to $50,000, back to $10,000. And that is a lot of volatility, right? How did you kind of manage your emotion and then mental kind of mindset when you saw those price fluctuate?
So in the beginning, 2016, I was rather fortunate. I like to say, if I do recall, for the most part of that 1 year journey, all the way until about 2018, just about 2018. I want to say my first exposure was somewhere in late December of 2016. That was a pretty steady track up. So naturally, it really wasn't tested, my conviction. I just pretty much just doubled down, right? Every passing day, I grew more and more fascinated with the asset I was buying, right? And again, when I look at Bitcoin, it's not really, nowadays I understand it's not really a risk, it's a matter of understanding. So that entire road up until about 2017, by 20,000, I was convinced that, we'd never see much lower ever again. And I want to say, for the most part, I really was fortunate to have gotten introduced to it at the right time, because for the most part, my first purchases for about the first 3 to 4 months were never really touched. They were really never really tested. But that 2017 or 2018 bear market, from 20,000 all the way down to 3,000, that didn't really scare me. It really didn't, because then I was starting to look at previous market cycles and its drawdowns, and I understood, well, this is just, another thing, right? That's not really where I was scared. I want to say in the 2018, 2019 phase, what really did scare me was that 3 months where it just drifted from about $3,600 to about 3,300, where it just seemingly did nothing. And if there's one thing I've learned about this journey, it's when it decides to do nothing, where you start to really, you're given a bit too much time to think about what you're doing. And you start to second guess your conviction. You start to second guess everything you taught you were known to believe was true. But I do have to say, 2016 to 2018 or 2019, I should say, was probably the easy part. What really the hardest moment, I would say, was the COVID crash, because not only was not only suffering extreme drawdowns, but so was the rest of the market. And I was convinced for a brief period of time here that this is the end days. This is the end days, and markets are gonna fall from the sky, and they were. I remember, this is back in my new job now, which I since left. I remember seeing limit downs, on the SPX, on the NASDAQ, on the Dow Jones, and I just assumed, well, everything's going to tumble here. It was the first time in my entire journey where I almost lost conviction. I was really, really worried. I was convinced that either I got scammed or I fell into some big sort of psyop, and I'm a fool, right? But it was shortly after where I had spoken to a couple of people at this time. My network had grown with traders and people I highly respect that were just telling me, you can't fall for this. You gotta stick to what you're doing, because this is volatile. It's volatility is not a risk. It's just part of them. It's part of a free market. And again, at the time, my confidence was very, very low. But at the same time, what really, really made the deciding factor here was I was only allocating what I was willing to lose. Really, that $30 a day was something I had vowed to do. It's not something that I felt, well, this makes or breaks my financial situation. It was seen as a car payment. It was seen as some sort of, monthly subscription to myself, right? It was not something where I felt like I needed to pull out at any given moment to make ends meet or to do. And I think that's very, very important when you're trying to do a journey like this, is you can't go all in with both feet in the beginning. Like you need to have some sort of slack, especially when you understand what you understand, which is that crypto, the Bitcoin in specific, is a highly volatile asset, and these moments will come. So again, to kind of like finalize this thing, the entire journey, the reason why the conviction was kept was because I understood what I was buying. I believed in what I was buying, and that really only comes from a strong understanding of it. But at the same time, I allocated an amount of money every day that I would have otherwise spent on useless things. So at the end of the day, I just saw it as a out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's what kept me headstrong on my ideas, my convictions, my beliefs. And over time, it turned into an opportunity. The way I saw lower prices, well, I started to get excited again, because it was like, we're given another chance. And that's really how I treated it. So yeah, to finalize it's really what I did.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating in a way. When you said it was just $30, right? That is so powerful. A lot of people invest more than they can afford in a hope that they can make more. And the moment the market goes against them, that's when they panic. They're like, okay, either you're gonna get wrecked or you're gonna get out. And that is the moment of this, like, the buying, the dip is for buying, right? And you later realize that thing when the market actually that turns back. That part where I wanted to also understand, yes, like you said, you almost lost the conviction at around, when it dipped from 20,000 to back to like 3,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about it went back to 50,000? Did you ever wanted to kind of feel like, okay, this is, we have reached the all-time high, and this is like, I should get out back then in, I think, 2021, 2022?
Absolutely not, because in my books, and still to my estimations today, I perceive Bitcoin to be criminally undervalued in ways that I wouldn't believe. It's nowhere near what I would expect its true valuation to be. So as far as when I should take profits, the money never really shook me. I have always stuck to the journey where it's I look less at the valuation in USD. I always look at the valuation in Satoshis, and it's about, I know it's a typical common term, especially amongst the Bitcoin community, but it's really about stacking sats. The whole belief of this comes from the idea that I don't no longer believe in the fiat currency. Again, it takes a bit of a radical approach to this. It takes a bit of a strong conviction, but I'm convinced. I'm still convinced that USD or its dollar valuation is a mere distraction. The journey has been about stacking sats, and it's about, how can I live within my means and still continue to do this without ever being matched. The only real time my conviction was tested was because of unforeseen and unprecedented circumstances that otherwise shook the rest of the world. It was something I never lived through. It was something my grandparents never lived through. It's something my parents never lived through. It was truly an unprecedented time, and money was the last of people's worries. That's the only reason why it was shaken. When Bitcoin went down in 2018 from 20,000 to 3,000, I didn't really lose conviction there. It was specifically that COVID crash, because there were a number of exchanges that were just liquidation cascading, and it would have otherwise went to zero if there weren't certain conditions in place. So that's the only real time I kind of panicked, because it was something I don't think anybody could have saw coming. And your first instinct, when you're thinking of something where a whole global market or a whole total supply chain just ceases to exist for 2 to 4 weeks at a time, it changed everything for me. And I just assumed truly that, well, if this is what I think it is, then what really matters after this? That's the only real time. But like prices going up to 60K, 90K, back down to 16K, I wasn't worried at all. It was that COVID crash that really, really, really made me double think about, like, does this even matter anymore? And that's about it. Like the higher it went, the easier it became.
That requires a huge conviction, and I believe like that comes from you spending countless hours kind of learning what it is, and why do we, where does it fit in today's economy. And talking about the COVID too, like I think the world literally stopped, and we did not stop for World War I or II.
That's
So
it.
we experienced something where the entire global economy stopped, right? And
Mhm.
that is, I mean, the moment where I mean, that completely makes sense, right? That's where you kind of have the doubt and the conviction, like what is right, what is wrong. And in that time, people don't, the last thing they worry about is the money. That's very true. Yeah. Rego, so I'm curious more about, like, when did you realize that this, DCA strategy was working, and how did that impact your confidence and commitment to the plan, like, being disciplined with it?
I want to say I realized it worked shortly after 2020 halving, if I'm not mistaken. This is when, if I'm not mistaken, just before the surge from 10K to 20K in a short amount of time. This is the 2020 cycle now that we're talking about, or going into 2021. This is where I assumed that the DCA strategy was effective. Less in the beginning phases, because I did know I would have to suffer quite a bit before I really saw a true gap in valuation from all the buying. And again, we kind of saw it again with the 2024 halving, right? We once again surged really, really far away from the prices we originally traded at. So again, I want to say the halving, my first ever real halving from having bought 4 years down, 4 years in advance, is where that belief started to come in. Before that, it felt like just a series of hovering above average, below average, above average, below average, and every psychological thing that could throw you off course. It really did happen after the halving. It's when that supply gets cut in half from its original block rewards the years before. That's when I really realized it doesn't really matter where you buy over these next 4 years, as long as you're buying consistently. And I'm humble in victory and defeat, but I have yet to be proven wrong on it. So I just continue to apply that conviction. My conviction's stronger than ever before, and this, I see it more with the real world, right? Where we're starting to gain exposure from corporate interest, national interest, political interest at this point. So again, I think the world is starting to catch on now. So I think halvings are significant. They're what I believe to be mathematically backed, and that's what makes Bitcoin a mathematical certainty against the dollar. And that's where my conviction comes from, really.
That is true. That the Bitcoin halving and how the world is catching up is really interesting. And I was in Twitter space. Gary Cardone, he did mention really good point. Today is the safest time up until now to invest in Bitcoin. Back in 2017, 16, 17, the cost to get in was expensive.
Hmm.
Not technical aspect, but the political part of it, the conviction part of it. A lot of people talking bullshit about Bitcoin and all those things. And right now, like you said, the country is getting in. The corporate is getting in, and there will be a game theory where one billionaire, Michael Saylor, he buys Bitcoin like crazy. When people see not people like us, but billionaire, right? When they see, I don't think they will back down. I think even Michael Saylor, he is pitching to Microsoft CEO. Right now, this is not a millionaire club. This is a $1 billion club, and there are some country. If Trump gets elected, right, and he actually starts a reserve, the Bitcoin reserve. Imagine what will China do, what will Russia do, what will India do, what will all of the other country will follow. And that concept itself is powerful, and that's a hats off to your conviction, man. It's really inspiring too. In our community, Rego, we try to view our mistakes as lessons, right? And I believe you might have made countless mistakes when you started out till today, right? And that is what shapes our journey itself, right? That is what it makes it beautiful. And those are the opportunity where you can actually learn things. What was your biggest lesson that you have learned, and that you wish you could share with your younger self?
That's a good question. As you know, 2018, 2016 introduced me into blockchain technology, crypto, Bitcoin specifically. 2018 also piqued my interest with derivatives trading, futures trading, et cetera, et cetera. Finding ways to extract from a market either through rotations, supply crunches, and et cetera. Right, the more trading aspect of things. The biggest mistake or the biggest lesson I've ever learned in the past 8 years, and I would say 6 years since I've actually begun trying to accelerate this process of acquiring more. The biggest mistake you can make is to get impatient, feel entitled, and most importantly, risk more than you're willing to lose. Like again, the only way conviction or anything of the sort can be matched is when you truly can tell yourself this money does not matter, and it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter, or else you start to make decisions based on these emotions, based on this factor. And one thing I've learned over the years is risking is a luxury, and a lot of people don't recognize it like that. They see it as an entitlement. They look at what we do, they see the money we make, but they don't understand the emotional pitfalls. They don't understand that a market preys on your emotions, right? And your expectations. And it's a very, very dangerous hole to fall into. It's a very, very dangerous trench. I would say my biggest mistake or my biggest lessons, we're trying to accelerate the process, either with some additional funds that I've added to the side to and hopefully extract off a move that I thought was imminent, or another pairing, for example, that I felt could extract quite a large amount in a short amount of time. Those are where my biggest lessons have come from. But there really is no fast formula. There really is no get rich quick scheme out there. It really does come with a lot of sacrifice. The biggest mistake or the biggest misconception is that everybody that has stuck around for this journey has had it easy. We've had our emotional, moments of pitfalls, and we've been through the ringer more than probably any market ever because of its volatility. And that's when you're most vulnerable, right? When a market, preys on your emotions, you become very, very vulnerable, and you feel the need to make a decision in that exact moment. For whatever reason, we're human beings, right? And a market is human beings buying and selling against each other. So to sum it all up, my biggest lesson or my biggest mistake, there's a number of them. There's a number of them. I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be, but I would say trying to accelerate the process and trying to do more with less is where I think a lot of people make their mistakes, myself included, and they're tough lessons to learn. They're extremely tough on the mind. They're extremely tough on the wallet. And the best thing you could do is have a long-term plan, a long-term conviction in something. And that way there are no expectations that require decisions on an intraday basis.
That is true. That is true. And I really like when you said risk is luxury. I think I think I'm gonna steal that sentence. It is indeed real luxury. A lot of people that I've talked to, they are afraid to risk, and it doesn't matter how much money they have, but they're afraid to risk. And that risk part has kind of something to do with how big you're going. Like in your case, like you said, $30 wasn't much. If I lose $30, it's okay. I'm good with that, right? I had a conviction. The worst thing scenario was, okay, I believed in something I shouldn't have. But if it worked out good, it works out really, really good. That's really true. Yeah. Rego, so for someone who is standing where you were in December 2016, right? And who is unsure about just starting out, and who might not have, the friends who might have introduced, like you were introduced to, what advice would you give them about beginning their own financial journey?
That's a pretty good question. If I was standing, 8 years ago in a position where I did not have a friend that introduced me to something, it would be very, very difficult to suggest where to go from there. But first and foremost, if you originally have um, a desire to change your financial situation, and a peak of curiosity is what you really need. Again, I can't speak for everybody, but for myself, I was fortunate enough to have a buddy to introduce this to me, and I kind of looked up to him in this sense. But if you do not have this in your own sense, but you do have the peak of curiosity on, how do I improve? The best thing to do is to surround yourself with people that might already have this interest. And again, most of the things I learned were not even from people I knew. If all aside this, with my own personal friends, again, I learned from a number of people like Alistair Milne, Francis Pouliot, which I have no personal relation with. I really enjoyed their content, and I really enjoyed what they were saying, and they put it in a way for me that made me understand it. The best thing you can do, first and foremost, is to get involved one way or another. That's the only way you're going to learn. And second of all, is to surround yourself with a network of either information or people that will pique your interest, will pique your curiosity. It doesn't have to be everybody. Not everybody's going to resonate with you in the same way, but what is important is that you can apply information that you're receiving in a way that it's understood. I found content that made sense to me, and that's what kickstarted the whole journey into my own fascination, my own passion, and everything along those lines. So that's the advice I'd give. If you have nowhere to go from, the best way to do is to start. And again, surround yourself with a network or a newsletter of information that will pique your curiosity or your interest.
That is true. You have to make a decision, right? How and where you see yourself in, again, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. And yes, it is true that friends and the circle is important, but it is equally important how you take those things. At any point, you could have, even though your friend kind of pursued the Bitcoin journey to you, right? At any point, you could have just shown no interest at all. That's where you brought the curiosity, right? You were curious about how things work, what was the problem. And then when you become curious, when I believe anyone become curious, right? We try to investigate what the thing is. We try to get to the bottom of it. And that's when we get new information. That's when we meet new people. And that changes the entire course of the financial journey. That is, being curious is really important. Yeah. Rego, so in 2016, right? I wanted to know, when I got involved in blockchain and crypto in 2017, there wasn't a good place to kind of buy and sell. I spent about half a day to find out about Coinbase back then. I was I was trying to see, okay, where to buy Bitcoin, and then there was some like the third party exchanges, not the decentralized exchange, but the third party where it would kind of match the seller and then the buyer, and then you kind of transact in between. And most of them were a scam as well. They would never kind of give you the Bitcoin if you send them the money. However, like, finding the Bitcoin, the Coinbase was really tough back then too. So how did you manage to kind of invest, dollar cost averaging 12 every 12 hour, $15? Was it, the reminder? Because that itself wasn't autonomous. Right now, you can do it with Coinbase, you can do it with Robinhood, but back then it wasn't. So like, how did you get that thing done?
So it was a number of exchanges at first. One of them was a local one, Bitcoin, which respected anonymity with the associated purchase. Again, that's founded by Francis Pouliot, which is how I stumbled onto Bull Bitcoin. Of course, in the beginning, it wasn't so simple. Making these type of purchases were not automated. So I did have an alarm on my phone at a certain time every day and a certain time every night, and I just hit the buy button. But at the time, there was also Coinbase available, and there was another exchange which doesn't even exist today. In fact, we have reasons to believe that owner faked his own death and ran away. The owner of Quadriga, which I believe there's a documentary on right now, but that used to be an exchange where you would be able to allocate a wire transfer and a certain allocated amount, right? And like any other exchange, it operated as intended, right? Buyers and sellers, you make the purchase, you receive the Bitcoin. After a month, you kind of offload it to a cold wallet. So I had a number of exchanges in the year of 2016. That would have been Quadriga, Bull Bitcoin, and of course Coinbase. And as the years went on, these avenues and platforms became more available. Some of them even went as far as to give you zero spot fees and spot incentives, right? So again, you were really buying what you received without a middleman taking a rather large chunk out of it. So in 2016, it was much more difficult. You had to do things manually, and I would say even before that, it was even more difficult. But I was just being introduced into the era where, again, this was becoming more automated, more easily accessible to the average person, less of the early adopters.
Yeah. Now again, when we look back, the amount of work and the things that you did, the series of actions that you took, really kind of separates the regular traders and investors versus who actually makes it. The reason I'm saying that is back in 2017 with all of the new thing especially, and then the entire journey, 80 years journey with ups and downs, managing to kind of consistently doing that thing, setting up so far that you set up the alarm and you just hit the buy button and not getting affected by where the price of the Bitcoin is really remarkable. And I think that's where a lot of people, kind of struggle with dollar cost averaging. Okay, they are dollar cost averaging, and then when the thing is getting high, they just want to sell, right? And when it is going to go down, it's like, okay, what should I do, right? And having really that conviction is really important. For the final question, Rego, I usually ask this to all of our guests. What do you think it takes to be the ultimate?
What do I think it takes to be the ultimate bull? Man, that's a tough question. Again, I think people are bullish on different things for different reasons, but I think the ultimate bull is by someone that has a belief that goes against the status quo. Kind of like how you saw the dot-com bubble and people having a max conviction in certain blue chips that you see today. The same thing goes with Bitcoin. You are going against the standard. You're going against everything we've ever known. And that requires an insane amount of understanding as well as an insane amount of conviction, right? And I say it all the time, conviction and understanding must go hand in hand together, or else you'll fold for anything, any price, you'll sell out for anything. It's the same way you'll witness people willing to die for something they believe in. And in many ways, that's my same conviction when it comes to this bag I hold. I truly, truly believe that this is the solution to many problems, not just the financial world, but way beyond that. It takes a real understanding of something to go against the tide. And the ultimate bull is found this way. They need to believe in something that 95% or even more aren't willing to believe in the moment where it's severely against you. As time goes on, this becomes more and more obvious to the, I want to say, the general public, or the people that like to believe traditional narratives, but an ultimate bull is made essentially from an unwavering conviction, and one that will not falter, one that will not reason with solutions or compromises. They simply believe what they believe, and you have to believe something is criminally undervalued or being short-sighted or overlooked in order to be ahead of everybody else, right? And I still believe this until this day, is that it's heavily overlooked. It's not even considered in the light that I would expect it to be considered in yet, being in 2024 now. It's obviously gone a long way, but it's still so far from where it has to go. And that's really what I leave you with. You need to have this unwavering conviction. It doesn't matter what people tell you. It doesn't matter what the price is, because the belief is beyond that. It's beyond that. It's a solution to a problem, and that's how it has to be seen. You'll ask any CEO, you'll ask any CFO, how do they vision their own company, and it's because they believe they're providing a solution. And I see Bitcoin as an ideology at this point. It is a solution, and the more time goes on, the more people will realize this, and that's just my belief. An ultimate bull comes from max conviction, absolute belief in what you're buying, and nothing and nobody will change that.
Believe in something. That is believe itself is a very powerful word, and no matter what you believe, whether you can make it or whether you cannot, you're both right. Whether you believe Bitcoin is going to be the next biggest thing still, or whether you don't, that is still, again, you're right in both cases. But believing in something and having that conviction is really powerful, and it pays off throughout the journey and throughout the long term. That is really inspiring. Thank you, Rego, for your time and sharing your journey with us.